If you've been watching the news lately, you've probably seen about this American college entrance scandal that's been going on, where these parents have been paying huge amounts of money for their children to either cheat on the entrance exams to get into some of these more prestigious high-level colleges, or uh, falsifying their backgrounds, making it seem like they were athletes when they were not athletes, all because they wanted to get into these particular high-level colleges that are very difficult to get into. Well, the government, of course, has come in and is cracking down on all of this, and the question is, what lessons can we learn from this? And I think there are several lessons that we can pick up on from this. First is that these big-name exclusive colleges, they're just not worth, going to these extreme levels to get into. These parents, I read that one parent had spent, I believe it was $6.5 million. I don't know if that was for one kid or for all of his kids, but $6.5 million to get a kid into a particular school. And the question is it even worth it? If you look at the way that some of these high-level schools operate, they generally seem to only want the best academically kids, the academically talented kids. And the question is, where is the merit in a college that only wants to accept someone who's already a genius and then put them through their program and graduate them? I don't see much merit in that. Now, if they were willing to say, hey, we're going to take somebody who's not the best, who's actually academically at the bottom of the educational spectrum, we're going to take him, we're going to make him a genius. Now, I would say that there's some merit in that. But to take somebody and to set yourself up to where you're kind of like, we only want the ones that are already the best, well, what are you doing? What purpose are you serving when you already take the ones that are already the best? You're not making them the best, they're already the best. And then you're putting them through that. So for that reason, if it was just that reason alone, I would say it's not worth it to send your kids to these high-level schools, because I don't see what they're doing to make people into the best when all they want are the ones who are already the best. And the second takeaway that we can get from this is that a lot of these kids, they apparently could not pass the entrance exams to get into these colleges, like the SAT or tests like that. And what we need to accept is that not everybody is high-level college material. Just God makes everybody differently. Some people are highly academically inclined from practically the time they're born. Some people are never going to be that way, and then some people are going to be in the middle. God makes everybody differently, and one is not better or worse than the other one. It's just they're just made differently for God's purpose. God has a reason for the different kinds of people that we have in the world. And so what these parents need to realize is that, if your kids are not high-level material, well, they just weren't made to be high-level college material. And you're doing them a disservice by trying to push them into an environment that they naturally cannot attain to. You're putting them in a place that has a very high likelihood of leading them to frustration, perhaps even failure, because you're forcing them to become something that they just were not created by God to be. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes, people with hard work, they can't change, and sometimes people just, they haven't worked hard academically, and then they make a turnaround and they start applying themselves, studying more, spending more time on their schoolwork, and they do improve their grades. I'm not saying that people cannot make improvements academically, but the truth is some people are just not inclined to high-level academic education. And that's just the reality. And that doesn't mean that they're bad. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. That's just how God made them. And to force them into an environment that they're not naturally inclined to is just to force them into an environment that's going to lead them to be frustrated and potentially just feel like giving up and throwing in the towel. And the final, and I think the most important takeaway that we get from this college level scandal is that, people who look at education uh, this way, they have a tendency to think that education determines your value, when education does not determine your value in any way whatsoever. Your value always has been and always will be determined by the character that you have. Are you a good person? Are you a righteous person? Are you a moral person? Are you an honest, upright person? That's what determines your value. But to say that a person who graduates from some high Ivy League, high-level college, that somehow makes them more valuable than other people, well, the root of that is just pride. It's just thinking that you're better than somebody else because you have had an opportunity that someone else did not have the opportunity to have. And, your value is never determined by the diploma that you have hanging on the wall. Your value will always be determined by the kind of person that you are. Are you a good person? Are you a righteous person? Are you a moral person? So if anything, when we look at the mistakes that these parents have made in being very unethical in the way they have went about trying to get their kids into these schools, there are some real takeaways that we can get from this. And, let's learn our lessons from other people's mistakes. It's a whole lot better to learn a lesson from someone else's mistake than it is to have to learn a lesson from our own mistake. And if we'll do that, we'll be more blessed and more prosperous people. I'm Daniel R. Jennings, and this has been another life lesson.